Happy Teachers Day. What we are trying to discuss is, other than school teaching, no teachers are getting any training on how to teach. Because the argument is, if you know the subject, you can teach it. What is the big deal? Subject knowledge is essential. Nobody is arguing against that. Subject knowledge is essential, but in science they say no, necessary but not sufficient condition. So like that, subject knowledge is necessary but not sufficient for teaching a subject. That is where this question of how to teach comes. Unlike when we were students, a lot more research has been done on teaching learning over the last, especially last 30 to 40 years. A lot of research data is available. So our sessions are designed based on those research data which indicate that how should we conduct sessions. So I want you to think about a course that you are planning to teach. Something that you are going to a classroom, even not the entire course, but in 1 hour or 2 hour or 50 minutes, whatever the class time. Think about that content. Please write one expected learning in that class. Whatever you have written, another name of that is called learning outcome. The expected learning. Every one of us have an expectation on learning when we enter to a classroom. That expectation is called learning outcome. The only problem is, suppose now I request some of you to read what you have written. That statement will be of different formats. There is a global guideline how to write the expectations of a teacher. So that's what we are going to discuss in the beginning. Because once that normalization is done, irrespective of the subject that you are teaching, there will be one format which will be the most apt way of telling a learner what is that I am expecting you to learn when you come to my class. And that is called learning outcome. Now, I am not sure whether you asked these two questions to address the previous question. Whenever you are asked to write learning outcome, we are supposed to ask these two questions. Question number 1, what should my students be able to do as a result of my teaching? And second question, at what cognitive level will my students be able to perform? Cognitive level, cognition means thinking. So what will be the thinking level of my students in my class, and what they will be actually performing or thinking as a result of my teaching. So unless your learning outcome statement answer these two questions, the learning outcome statement is not properly designed. So I want you to quickly note down these questions, because as the workshop proceeds, we are going to develop the learning outcome based on these two questions. Okay, these are the basically we can say criteria for designing outcome. Okay, we are slightly digressing, but it's important to ask this question. From a teacher's point of view, what purpose do you see for this exercise called designing outcome? You can address this question individually, and even since you are sitting in around a table, please have a small discussion and then address this question. What purpose do you see for this exercise called designing outcome for your course? As a teacher, why should I do this? Okay, that is one answer I can take. When we set a learning objective or a learning outcome or set of goals, we will stay focused. That is one advantage for a teacher. Strategies for teaching. Suppose you have a goal 1, goal 2, goal 3. I may not be using the same strategy. Depends upon the goal, I can change the strategy. That is one advantage for a teacher. Assessment, that word is what I was looking. When you have a set of goal, 1, 2, 3, you can actually assess it very nicely. You can also do assessment without the goals. But the difference between assessing something when you have a set of goal will be more meaningful, more useful and more systematic. Yeah, the process as well as the assessment, the teaching as well as the assessment, you can choose the right way if you have a set of outcome. That is the reason why we need outcome before we start thinking about teaching methods. Okay. Many of you think things you already told. A teacher can prepare classroom materials. What kind of textbook, what kind of reading materials, what kind of research articles. You can choose it in a right fashion if you have a set of outcomes. It will keep you focused. What kind of assignment, what kind of exam. These things can also be clearly designed if you have a set of outcomes. Now, we are now stepping into the design aspect. There is a non-negotiable condition for designing outcome. We are saying that outcome is course dependent. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you teach or I teach. It doesn't matter whether he learns or she learns. A course will have a set of outcomes. That is the idea. Okay, it is course dependent. So, if you are designing the outcome for the course, what one should do is an outcome statement must contain a verb which is describing an observable action from the learner. It has to be an observable action. So, I want you to keep this definition in mind and then redo that exercise one more time, the one that you have done in the beginning. Go back to the course, you have written something, you can quickly verify whether it is matching with this definition. If it is not matching, please rewrite it. Whatever course that you are teaching, whatever content that you are teaching, let us try to say that this is my learning outcome. The only thing is that that statement should be matching with this statement or this condition. Whether that statement has a verb which is observable to anybody, they will be able to understand. See, many of the expectation, understanding the learners is one of the objectives of teaching. There is no question about it. So in that way, that idea is very genuine. All teachers want. Only thing is, now we have a condition here that whatever our outcome that we are writing should be observable. So in that context, the word understand creates some confusion. Because understanding is happening in learner's mind, which is not observable to anybody. So intention is good, the statement we need to work on it. Okay, the more you think, you will see that it is not that easy to simply say that this is what I want them to do. What exactly you are looking for. Many of us, when we go to the classroom for teaching, we don't have that clarity. We have clarity what is to be taught. That is running in all our head. But what is to be learned, what the student is supposed to do, that part is not very clear. They will be able to process a registration application. Matching, right? Closely coming to the, so somebody is processing a registration application, it's an observable action. We can see that. So something a learner doing which I can see. That should be the first condition for outcome. Okay, there are many things, but the foremost, the first and the most important thing is students doing something should be observable to the teacher. So the learning outcome is they will be able to compute the refund, right? That's an observable action. Somebody is computing the refund that you can observe. So like that, before going to any session, we should have a set of this kind of outcomes. When you do the assessment, you will be only asking for observable actions. It will be boiling to the assessment. Outcomes are going to be connected with the assessment. Because at that assessment point in time, all teachers say that, do this, do that. So why don't we have a clarity on that in the beginning, before we go to the classroom? That exercise is called designing outcomes. But outcome design is just this is a tip of the iceberg. Okay, first rule only we told. There is another part. Now in this one, the major bottleneck is some words like understand, know. These things will come to very frequently. Not only here, I mean across the globe, in all teaching workshops, when we ask them to design outcomes, teachers will normally say they will be able to understand what I want to teach. They will be able to know. They will be able to appreciate. They will be able to get an idea about this. Or they will be able to get a better idea about this. All these things we cannot use it as a outcome statement. What is the problem? Yeah, they're all intangible. They're not observable. Among these most maybe verification may be possible, but direct observation is not possible. So among these, the most difficult part that teachers don't want to get rid of is the first word, because that's very dear to us. Right? We say the dharma of a teacher is to make others understand. So that word we are not ready to leave. But the issue with understand is verbs such as understand do not describe an observable outcome. As a result, learning outcome that rely on verbs such as understand cannot be assessed, practiced or improved. This is another issue. Students and faculty members often have different interpretations of the word understand. It's a very broad term. Some teachers say, no, this student has understanding, but that student has deep understanding. What does that mean? And just ask yourself, when we say, I want you to understand this, what exactly you mean by that? Do you have clarity? So when we say, I want you to understand this, I want you to understand GST calculation. What do you mean by that? They'll be able to calculate it, or they'll be able to predict, or they'll be able to define how the steps. What exactly you are looking at when we say understand? Understand is a very broad term. Oftentimes, students and faculty members have different notions about it. That is another reason why we are not recommending this word for designing outcomes. Learning outcomes that rely on verbs such as understand do not convey opportunities for practice or improvement either by the student or by the teacher. So we are telling that I want you to understand the basic concepts. Now students going back after the class, what is she supposed to do? Understand the basic concepts. So this confusion, just to avoid this confusion, we are saying that when we design outcome, let us make sure that it is observable, so that there is no confusion, right? Now, if you don't want to change this word at all, then or we are stuck at this word, here is a simple trick. Think about a room with 40 people, and you are teaching. Imagine a situation where half of the people understand what you are teaching and half do not, and they are sitting randomly. Okay, what activity will you ask them to do so that you can distinguish these two halves? That activity will be your outcome. You can keep this as a backup plan. Whenever you stuck with this word understand, you say, okay, I think half understand, half do not. Now, how do I differentiate this? And moment there will be a question comes to your mind, and that question will carry an action word. There are no questions without action word. Not even a single question. Every question demands an observable action from the learner. There is nothing like telepathic assessment. Only when the learner does something, we will say, now she understands or she doesn't understand. Okay, so point number 2. Is there any criteria to choose such activities? Or it's just a random pick? It is not a random pick. There is a technology, there is a terminology for this that is called taxonomy of learning. Taxonomy means classification, right? So there are learning taxonomies available. Using that, a teacher decides that, okay, I'm going to use this particular action word, this particular observable word. One popular taxonomy of learning is Bloom's taxonomy. Many of you might have heard, I don't know. Benjamin Bloom and co-workers. It's a very old taxonomy, last century, but 2001 there was a revision by one of his students, Anderson. It's a very qualitative language to express different kinds of thought process a human brain can have, irrespective of any subject that you teach. So general, so common that it doesn't matter what is the subject that you are teaching. Any human brain, what are the kinds of different thought process going on? They classified into 6 sections. Okay, it can be a way to communicate to the learners that when I teach this section, I want you to think in this level. That is the idea, basic idea of this, using this taxonomy. Let us have this initial plan of different levels of learning. So one level they call remember level, another level they call analyze level, another level they call create, well, fortunately, unfortunately, another level they call understand, another level they call evaluate, and another level is apply. Okay, but what each level means is written below. Remember level means the learners are supposed to recall the information. It's a memory based thinking process. Apply means they are solving some problems in a given context. That's called apply. Create level thinking means what you call generally out of the box thinking, something innovative way of thinking. Like that, every level they have defined it. In this case, the understand level means comprehend the meaning of a concept, conceptual meaning. That is what Bloom's and co-workers define understand. Now, what I want you to do in each table is quickly arrange these levels from less challenging to more challenging. Now, I tell you the challenge that you are facing. A teacher is saying that, for remember it is very easy. Another teacher say, remember is the most difficult part I am facing. Right? Individually it varies. That's why I put it as a group work so that there can be some confusion. So the idea is, see, they have arranged in a order, ascending order, increasing difficulty. But that is mostly like a statistical. If you are asking questions of these various thought process to a large number of people, you can actually see a kind of ascending, descending order, how people respond. So that means, for example, majority of the people remember will be easy, relatively. An individual may find it difficult. Where for like create level question, out of the box thinking, majority may find it difficult, relatively. But there can be one guy who is very creative. For him or her, it's very easy job. So don't think that individual way. For a large number, how this thought process, because in a classroom you are always dealing with a bulk of people, how generally or the average learner see this kind of thought process. That's the question. So this is the order. Remember level is completely memory based, even mug up, yeah, rote learning. Understand level, according to them, what they defined is meaning of the concept. If the learner gets that, that is the understand level. What is the difference between apply and analyze? You have large data set, you are trying to see a connection between the individual data either by dissecting or by connecting the data. That part is called, that function is called analysis. The difference between these two is apply means the learner is using the concept more or less similar context. You teach something in the classroom, in the assessment, a similar situation is provided. Whereas if the situation is completely different, context is unfamiliar, then the learner has to analyze to proceed. All data are given, but how to proceed, learner doesn't know because context is different. So now the learner has to say, okay, this data is connected with this data like this, or this may be that. So what should I do? What is the first step? What is second step? All this thinking is called analysis. So analysis is required only when the context is unfamiliar. Whereas the context is familiar, then you can simply apply the concepts. So the difference between analyze and apply is the degree of unfamiliarity for the context. These two levels are slightly tricky. Create level, we already told it is out of the box thinking. It is, difficult, challenging. What is this level? Evaluate. Yeah. Evaluation is basically a decision making, a judgment. Right? You are evaluating something, you are quantifying something, you are making a decision out of that. But in many of our coursework, even if you ask the student to decide, the student is deciding based on the existing body of knowledge. Hence, student is not evaluating. If you want your students to evaluate, you need to raise the students to a level where the student develop a hypothesis and then make a judgment. For example, in a normal classroom, we ask this question, what is the answer for this? Justify your answer. Now, when they justify it, there are two ways of justifying. One is they can justify based on the existing available knowledge. Right? They can say that I have decided this because A, B, C. Answer they can write. These ABCs are coming from the textbook. In such a situation, she is not evaluating. But she can also justify saying that ABC is based on her hypothesis. Then we can say now she is evaluating the context. So any learner deciding something based on her or his hypothesis, then only we can say that that person is thinking in an evaluate level. That is extremely challenging. Equally challenging as out of the box thinking. A set of guidelines, a set of criteria has to be developed by the students. Okay, so these two top levels are not easy for a teacher to train. So when you have outcomes, you are setting in different outcomes in different levels, you need to also have a clarity. How are you going to achieve it? Top two levels, when you ask a question, suppose there are 40 students in the class, potentially how many answers can come? 40. 40 creative thinking means 40 different way of creatively thinking. 40 different hypotheses can come. Essentially it means that you don't have an answer key. So how do you do evaluation? These are the challenges. Okay, so when you set an outcome in these levels, we need to also consider all those difficulty aspects. Okay, for the time being, our job is to design outcome. In that context, what are we going to do with these levels? Please go back to the questions. There are two questions for designing outcomes. First question was observable verb, that we already discussed. What is the second question? What is the cognitive level? These are the cognitive levels. So in your outcome, you need to actually combine these two things. That is the exercise of designing outcome. How do we combine? Whenever a student is doing an observable action, he or she must be in any of these levels. Which level is that? It is your responsibility to tell. You are the subject expert. For a particular student observable activity, which level is she doing based on memory? Then she will be in the remember level. If she is doing that observable action based on a creative thinking, she will be in that level. So which level of thinking are you demanding when you teach a particular topic? And what is the corresponding observable action? So this exercise may take some time. It's not that easy. Sometimes you will see that different levels are involved together. All kind of feelings will come. But the idea is that for any particular cognitive action, you can actually narrow down to one level. That means mostly that is the level where the student will be involving. Other levels also he or she may be accessing. But for that particular, sorry? Yeah, so it's teacher's choice. So depends upon the course. Some advanced course maybe only top. I mean, like many other level, analyzed level can be focused, but basic courses can be in the lower level. But what is the level that we are targeting, and what is the action that we are looking, should be clear to the teacher before he or she steps into the class. That is the idea. Because without having a clarity on what is to be learned, teaching is not possible in that sense. I mean, you can teach, you can try, you can claim that you are teaching, but it's not an efficient process unless the teacher is clear what is that we are looking for. It's like going somewhere without knowing the destination. If you are teaching that way, right? We fix the destination and then travel becomes more meaningful. That is the idea.